and welcome to Fantasy View with me, Jason Hubbard. Here I review fantasy novels to let you know what to read if it catches your fancy, and I let you know about the books I wrote myself. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to meet yourself? Not from the future or the past, but from another dimension. Someone who looks just like you, but had a different upbringing. With my luck, I probably wouldn't like my other dimensional counterpart. He'll probably end up kicking me where the sun don't shine, then go on to be President of the United States and act like it's 1984. I think the concept of a mirrorverse, like the one in Star Trek, can be fun to explore in fantasy and sci-fi. So when I saw this book on Twitter, I quickly bought it, expecting a wild and intriguing ride. It's called At Water's Edge, Part 1 of the Water Rushes series by S. McPherson. It starts with main character Desiree Storm, sitting in her English home when her brother arrives, angry and drunk. He proceeds to do what she expects, which is to beat the living shit out of her. Which she lets him do at least once a week. She has a friend, Nathaniel, who knows about this, yet for some damn reason, he doesn't alert the cops to this. A little later, Desiree is in jail, long story, where she meets a lady who tells her the craziest thing. There's another dimension where everyone has a counterpart, and a portal between dimensions occasionally opens if you know how to find it. In this other world, human beings were forced out from their lands by a collection of vampires and warlocks called the Vildacruz. And since then, dimensional crossings have been forbidden, although they're still possible, of course. And lo and behold, Desiree meets her counterpart named Lexovia, who crossed dimensions simply because she was bored. According to the powers that be, counterparts can't exist in the same dimension for very long, or else the universe explodes or something, and a portal can only be opened for roughly an hour. Well, what happens is that Desiree accidentally goes over to the other side, while Lexovia remains on Earth. Reason being that Lexovia's friend, Milo, kept holding Desiree's hand as he ran through the closing portal. So now Desiree is in a world of magic and fantastic creatures, where she must stay for 2 weeks until the next portal opens. You would think that Desiree and Lexovia's friends would be freaking out about this, but the author simply glosses over this in a rush to get the story moving. Since Desiree is here and her counterpart is gone, it's up to her to pretend to be her counterpart. This includes being the cheerleading captain of the magic school, and as if that wasn't enough, Lexovia has something called the Last Ellentries, which means she can use a variety of magic powers. She's also considered the one who will save the world once she reaches her 18th birthday. So Lexovia is the chosen one trope, and it's up to Desiree, who barely has any magic, to impersonate her. No pressure. This setup leaves the story open to plenty of adventure and intrigue, but as it turns out, the author is more interested in romance, as Desiree spends a lot of time with Milo, a blonde-haired guy whom she had the hots for the moment she first laid eyes on him. There are adventure stories with romance in them, and then there are romance stories with adventure in them. It sounds weird when I put it like that, but you should know what I mean. At Water's Edge turns out to be the latter, which would be fine if the romance was interesting, but it's not. Our leading couple doesn't have much chemistry between them, other than physical attraction and fun nights out in the town, and they don't seem to have much in common, and if they do, the author doesn't seem willing to share with the reader. She simply writes that conversation flows easily between them, and that's it. Of course, Desiree relates to the abuse she's endured from her brother, so that's certainly something. But it's not enough to get me emotionally invested in this couple. A lousy romance is bad enough, but the story gets worse, and it has to do with a huge mistake Desiree makes. Milo tells her about a cruise ship that human beings used to go on, and Desiree convinces Milo to take them to this ship using his super convenient teleporting power. So Milo teleports them to the shore overlooking the cruise ship. Desiree is in a gown, and he's in a tux, and the two of them swim over to the ship. Yes, you heard right. Desiree swims to the ship while wearing a gown. Of course, this isn't something I've tried myself, but I imagine swimming while wearing a gown wouldn't be easy. Once they climb aboard, Milo uses his super convenient magic powers to make them instantly dry, and then they attend a party that's going on, which is being run by vampires and warlocks. You know, the bad guys. Desiree and Milo wear masks to disguise the fact that they're humans, and they successfully mingle with the vampires and warlocks. But eventually, the partygoers catch on that they're humans, and the lovers get chased off the ship, and then presumably make it back home okay. The villainous Villa crews soon find out the identities of the interlopers, and they figure out that Lexovia, the chosen one who's destined to save the world, has been replaced with her dimensional counterpart. With this in mind, the Vilda crews plan to not only kill Desiree, but also to begin the invasion of the lands left in human control. I knew something had to give to make the Vilda crews a viable threat for the sake of the story, but in case you missed it, let me make it clear. Desiree exposes herself to the Vilda crews, the enemy of mankind, just because she wanted to go on a date on a cruise ship filled with vampires and warlocks. As she went to the cruise ship, she thought to herself that she must be crazy. If I was there, I would add that she must be stupid as well. She also proves to be self-centered, as she only thinks about her relationship with Milo and how she'll do damn well anything to stay with him, even if it means starting a war. Desiree is 17 years old, so I suppose some selfishness and recklessness isn't entirely uncalled for, but having the idea of going on a date in the middle of enemy territory simply made her unsympathetic. I hate to say it, but Desiree makes Bella from Twilight seem like a rocket scientist. Later in the book, after shit has hit the fan, Desiree finally realizes how foolish she's been, and she half-heartedly accepts the consequences of her actions. But by then, it was too late. Desiree's character had ruined the story for me. I could have quit the book, but I rushed through it if only just to see how much worse it could get. It actually doesn't get worse, but Desiree doesn't get any better either. I've read a lot of books from lesser-known authors on my Kindle Fire, and I'm impressed at the imaginative stories they've come up with. Many of these stories rely on the usual cliches, true, but most of them have at least one thing that made them worth my time. So it's been a while since I came across a story like this that's fatally flawed. Its main protagonist is not only foolish, she's thoughtless too. She makes a huge mistake, which is so obvious she could have stopped herself before she carried it out, and then she thought little of it afterward. Furthermore, the magical world is uninteresting, the romance is bland, and the dimension-hopping concept is not very compelling. The story began with a lot of potential, but by the end, most of it is wasted. I don't recommend this book, even to romance fans. I'm sure there are better romance stories out there than this one, where the leading lady is too focused on how hot some guy is than to look at the bigger picture. I mean, she had just one job, and that was to impersonate her counterpart without anyone knowing, and she blew it in the worst way possible. I'm Jason Hubbard. Thanks for listening to Fantasy View, and please, keep reading.